Okay, 2-5-1 is the most commonly used chord progression in jazz. It's found in almost every single jazz standard. It provides a strong sense of finality and establishes the tonic chord. This is because we move through a predominant, dominant, and tonic functioning chord progression. And that 5-1 perfect cadence at the end really sounds final. It sounds like a full stop at the end of a sentence. But you don't have to resolve to the 1 for a 2-5 to sound final. You can resolve to any other chord and it will still sound strong and still sound like a full stop. Right, this is the idea behind a deceptive cadence. So like a 5-6, or a 5-4. Right, so the dominant chord resolving to any other chord except for the tonic chord. Now, because 2-5-1s are so common and so overused, they can eventually sound a little bit boring and expected and plain. So we can replace or reharmonize a 2-5-1 with a different 2-5 to make it sound a bit more interesting while still retaining that strong 2-5 movement, which still acts like a bit of a full stop at the end of a phrase. Now, there are a number of commonly used 2-5 substitutions. Now, you'll find these written out in actual chord progressions of actual songs, but you can also use this idea to reharmonize an existing 2-5-1 chord progression. Now, let's start with a standard 2-5-1 chord progression, so D minor 7 to G7 to C major 7. Now, a really common 2-5 substitute for this is the backdoor progression, which goes F minor 7 to B flat 7 to C major 7. And of course, another widely used 2-5 substitute is the tritone substitution, which goes A flat minor 7 to D flat 7 to C major 7. And yet another 2-5 substitution that is less widely used is something I've called the front door progression. Though I just made that up and I'm sure it has some kind of proper real name. But that goes B minor 7 flat 5 to E7 to C major 7. Now, if we take the root note of each of these dominant 7 chords, that is the G, B flat, D, and E, we have a G diminished 7 chord. So this set of 2-5 substitutions are all related to each other, and they're all sort of just a minor third away from each other. And all of them are quite widely used and still create quite a strong sense of finality and still establish that C as a kind of tonic chord. Now, I think that's pretty interesting, as well as the standard tritone substitution, which everybody knows and uses. So that is substituting a G7 for a D flat 7. You can also use a dominant chord a minor third above and a minor third below the root note of your dominant chord as a substitute chord. So the B flat 7 and the E7. Now, there's a couple of ways you can explain why this particular set of chord progressions sounds good and strong and solid. So we have the standard 2-5-1, which sounds good because it just follows a circle progression, that is, the bass notes just move down in intervals of fifths. And then we have the tritone substitution of that. Now, A minor is the relative minor of C major. And what I've labeled the front door progression is just a 2-5 that's leading to the A minor 7, but instead we play a C major 7. And of course, the A minor 7 is just a substitute chord of the C major 6, right? It's got all the same notes. And then the backdoor progression is just a tritone substitution of the 2-5 leading to the A minor 7. Right, so all these progressions are just a 2-5 leading to the tonic chord or a substitute of the tonic chord, or a tritone substitution of a 2-5 leading to the tonic chord or a substitute of the tonic chord. Or another way to analyze this is to look at the actual notes being played in each of the dominant chords, and relating each note back to a degree from the point of view of the G7 chord. So the G7 obviously has a 1, 3, 5 and 7. A B flat 7 from the point of view of the G has a sharp 9, 5, 7, flat 9. A D flat 7 has a sharp 11, 7, flat 9, 3. And an E7 has a 13, flat 9, 3, 5. Again, all from the point of view of that G7 chord. And another interesting thing, which I've mentioned in past videos, but it's worth repeating here, is that if we have a dominant chord and we increase the root by 1 semitone, we have a sharp 5 diminished 7 substitute chord. And this is effectively a rootless G7 flat 9. So G7 flat 9 without a root. Now interestingly, this is also a rootless B flat 7 flat 9, a rootless D flat 7 flat 9, and a rootless E7 flat 9. Right, so dominant chords that are a minor third away from each other are all very closely related because of the symmetry of our sort of 12-tone equal temperament tuning system. But again, there's no need to restrict yourself to just minor third substitutes of the 2-5 progression. You can literally play any other 2-5 and resolve it back to that original tonic chord. Again, to create a kind of deceptive cadence. So for example, instead of going down a minor third, you could go down a major third and play B flat minor 7 to E flat 7 to C major 7. Right, that still sounds quite strong and quite final. That 2-5 progression provides a strong sense of finality, no matter what key or what chord you're resolving it to, as long as you use smooth voice leading. And in this video, we've just restricted our attention to 2-5s. But in fact, any chord can resolve to any other chord if you use appropriate voice leading, which I have a separate video on. Now, this idea we will come across again when we discuss non-functional chord progressions in future videos. But for the moment, we've just restricted our attention to 2-5s. Right, and that's it for this lesson. So next time you come across a 2-5-1 chord progression, play a completely different, unrelated 2-5 and still resolve it to that original 1 chord, and it'll still sound good, it'll still sound strong and final, but it'll sound a little bit more interesting and jazzy and unexpected and unique because you haven't stuck to that boring old same 2-5-1 pattern. Cool, thanks guys, see ya.